Acquisition Regulation 3022, Applicable Labor Laws to Government Acquisitions. 3021, Basic Labor Policies, Labor Relations 101. Minutes of Union Representative of the Department of Homeland Security Installations. Minutes of the Union Representative of the Transportation Security Administration, United States Service, Secret Service Installation Worksite with not governed by this rule. The laws, regulations, save the order policies applicable to the policy of the Department of Homeland Security with the non-employee of the Labor Union Representative with contract with employee with the Department of Homeland Security to visit with the worksite with the Translate Labor Union business with the contractor employee with the union stewardship pursuant to the executing union collective with the bargaining agreement of the president with the non-inter free for the contract worker on the Department of Homeland Security contract with the violate with the safety security regulation with the maybe the applicable with the person visiting the installation and maybe the incident with the vandalism, legal work stoppages, interference with the working employee labor union representative may be subject to access limitations. No employee labor union representative may be permitted to talk meeting with the collective union due to the make speech with the control of the union matters while visiting the worksite with during the work hours. When a non-employee labor union representative is denied with the entry of the worksite with the person denying entry should make a written report to the Department of Homeland Security Labor Advisor with a competent labor advisor if the need of those 2 working days of the request entry is denied. The report shall include the reason of the denial of the name of the representative of the denied deemed entity with the union affiliation number, the name and the title of the person denied entry. 101-71 Contract Law. The contract officer may be applicable to the entry of the clause of Homeland Security Acquisition Regulation Title 48, 3052, 2022. 70 striking picketing effective with the timely completion of the contracting work and solicitation contract officers may be applicable to serve the clause of Homeland Security Acquisition Regulation Title 41, 48, 3052, 221, 71 striking picketing affecting access to the Department of Homeland Security facility installations and solicitation contracts. 3022-4 Labor Standardization involving construction administration, law enforcement. 406, 4069 withholding further suspension of the contract payment. At disposition, contract payments will be withheld and suspend forward wage underpayments of the Secretary of Labor to contracting officer to ensure the completion of the Department of Homeland Security 7940 employment claim at a wage restitution obtained with the employee with the claiming the restitution of the act. Contract 3022, Local Hire, United States Coast Guard, Policy, U.S. Coast Guard, as required in Title 48, 14, U.S. Standard Code 666, U.S. Coast Guard shall include provisions of local hire. Each contract for the construction service to perform in whole or in part by the state with a has incomplete rate, unemployment rate, success with an average unemployment is determined by the Secretary of Labor. 3022, the number 9001, Contract Clause, U.S. Coast Guard for the U.S. Coast Guard Contract Officer, and for the U.S. Coast Guard to Hsar with Title 48, CFR 3052, 222. 90 local hire provisions. All solicitation contracts dated with the Homeland Security Acquisition Regulation Title 48 CFR 3022 9000. Alright, 3023 Homeland Security Acquisition 3023 Environmental Energy Waste Efficient Renewable Energy Technology Occupational Safety and Drug-Free Workplace. 3023 Hazard Material Identification Material Safety Data. Contract Clause, Contract Officer, ensure for the clause of the removal of the disposal of the hazardous substance, applicable license permits and solicitation contracts for removal of the disposal of hazardous waste material. 3023-5 The Drug-Free Workplace, applicable head of any of the code may issue determined as far as Title 48 CFR 23501, except for the drug-free workplace, as far as 23-5 contracts supporting undercover law enforcement operations. 3023 506 Suspension Pay Determination Contract Department Suspension Action Submit Request for the Hsar of Title 40 CFR 3000 7000 3023-10 The Federal Complaint for the Right to Know Laws and Pollution Requirements of 1004 Department of Homeland Security Directive 02302 Environment Management Program provide guidance direction compliant with environmental laws, rules, regulations. Executive Order Department of Homeland Directive 02501 Sustainable Practice to provide with the guidance direction compliant with the Sustainable Acquisition and Sustainable practice with the contracting officer shall ensure solicitation contract contains appropriate substantial practice with the requirement of provision clause. Contractors should comply with the Department of Homeland Security with sustainable acquisition environmental policy, taking appropriate action to eliminate with the reduce the impact of the environment. Subsart 302390 Safety requirements of the U.S. Coast Guard contracts. 3023-9000 Contract Clause U.S. Coast Guard. U.S. Coast Guard where all parts of the contract perform with the government owned least profit the contracting officer ensure for the clause of the Hsar 48 CFR 3052 to 2390 Accident and Fire Reporting. Alright, Hsar, Homeland Security Acquisition Regulation 3023, Protection, Privacy, and Freedom of Information Act 3024, Protection of Individual Privacy 3102, 70, Procedure Implementing Privacy Act 1974, contained with the Department of Health Regulation under Title 6, CFR Part 5, Subpart B, Privacy Act 3024, 2, Freedom of Information Act 2000, 3024, 203, Policy, Department Implementation Freedom of Information Act, codified with the Regulation Title 6, CFR Part 5, Subpart B, Freedom of Information Act, information requests, concerns, award, beyond those routinely handed to the contracting officer's identification, successful office of the public announcement of the briefing surety notices under Hsar 3028-1066 of shall be supplemented with the Freedom of Information Act, Office of the Component of the Making Award Freedom of Information Act, Office of the Department of Homeland Security, Operation only is the Department of Disclosure Officer of the Department of Homeland, Washington, D.C. 20528. Freedom of Information Act at DHS.gov, CFR 48, CFR 15207B, Safeguarding Proposal. Alright, Part 3025, Foreign Acquisition, 3025, American Recovery Reinvestment Act, Restriction, Federal Foreign Acquisition, 7000, Scope of Subpart, Implement 604, American Recovery Act Reinvestment, 2009, Public Law 1115, 7001, definitions of commercials apply with the items described in the Hsar Title 40 CFR 3025,7002. The means the items of the whether an end item or component of the meaning of the definition for the commercial items set forth in Title 48 CFR 2101. Component means the items of the supply by the government is brought with the end item or another component. End item means the supplier that delivered under the line of the item of contract, non-commercial. Supply with the item described in the Hsar of the Title 48 CFR 3025,7002. That means an item supply whether an end item or a component that does not meet the definition of commercial item set forth in Title 48 CFR 2101, which directly with the national security interest meet and intend with the Department of Homeland Security acting protection of the nation, internal, external pledge, protecting the nation's support of the transportation system, the maritime, the domain, critical infrastructure determined by the contracting officer. 7002, restriction on clothing and fabrics related. 7002, restriction. Following restriction implementation section 604 of the American Recovery Reinvestment Act of the 2009 Public Law 111 5 to apply all the contract option order within and after August 16, 2009, except for the provided with the Title 48 CFR 3025-7002 to the items components to any listed in paragraph A or B with the section items directly with the national security interest of the United States. The item has not been grown, reprocessed, reused, or produced in the United States. Commercial, non-commercial items of clothing, material with the components within other than sensor with electronics, other items not normally associated with the clothing and with the material with the components thereof. Tents, tarpaulins, covered textiles, belts, bags, protective equipment such as body armor, sleep systems, sleeping bags, load carrying equipment such as field packs and textile marine equipment, parachutes and bandages, non-commercial items of cotton, natural fiber, woven silk blends, spun silk yarn and cartridge cloth, synthetic fabric, coated synthetic fabric, including foul fabrics, yarns of the such as fabrics, canvas products, wool, whether the form of the fabric yarn contain the fabric material of manufactured articles, any item of the individual equipment in manufactured form, or containing any of the fiber yarns, fabrics, and materials listed in paragraph B. Alright, 3025-7002 with exemption, all acquisition filing categories not subject to the restriction of Title 48 CFR 3225-7002. Acquisition at below simplified acquisition threshold, items not directly related to national security interests of the United States, acquisition any items on otherwise Title 48 CFR 327002, Chief Procurement Officer determines if its own grown, repossessed, reused, proposed, produced United States cannot be acquired, will be needed satisfactory quantities, quality, and sufficient quantity with the United States with the market price of the exemption is used. Only Department of Homeland Security Chief Procurement Officer authorized to make the domestic non-availability determination. Department of Homeland Security component no later than 7 days after the award of contract. Most notification exemption has been applied with the government-wide point without entry with it being combined with its synopsis or supporting documentation. The Chief Procurement Officer determining prior to the Department of Homeland Security components which will include the analysis alternative that was not required with the domestic non-availability determination written justification requiring activity to be specified with its alternatives are acceptable. Acquisition items listed in the FARS Title 48 CFR 25104 emergency acquisition activities located out of the United States. Acquisition by foreign vessels acquisition by vessels in foreign waters, acquisition covered in items 3D52 7002 1A and B containing non-compliant fibers with the total value of the non-compliant fibers contained with the end items does not exceed 10% of the total purchase price of the end item. Acquisition items otherwise covered in Title 48 CFR 3025 7002 1A and B with restriction procurement of the items have then been grown, reprocessed, reused, produced in the United States consistent with the United States obligation international agreements to acquisition products that are eligible products. Title 48 CFR 254 not cover these restrictions. Title 48 CFR 3025 7002 with a specific regulation of the trade agreements 3025 7002 2.3 specific application with trade agreements covered items entitled with a non-discriminatory treatment under the World Trade Organization agreement with a government procurement or any free trade agreement listed in the FAR's Title 48 CFR 25.4 subpart applied as follows. Solicitation orders existing and option contracts issued any of the component with the Transportation Security and Act Administration which are covered with the items procured with the value with its both of above the simplified acquisition threshold below applicable trade agreement threshold in Title 48 CFR 25.402 apply with the Title 48 CFR 3025 7002 Set 1 or Section 3025 7002 H with exclude eligible products designated with the country of the foreign free trade agreement thresholds beneath the simplified acquisition threshold for solicitation ordering exercising option contracts issued with a component of the Transportation Security Administration covered with which will be procured with exceeding of $194,000 and Title 48 CFR 3025 7002 1 does not apply if the item are eligible product with the FAR's 48 CFR 25.4 with the FAR's 48 CFR 25 instead. For solicitation orders exercising an option contracts issued with the Transportation Security Administration covered items will be accrued in value exceeded with the simplified acquisition threshold. Title 40 CFR 3025 7002 apply with the covered items with Mexico, with the Canada, Chile, with the Transportation Security Administration, and with the covered government, any with the North American Trade Agreement. In U.S.-Chile free trade agreement with the Transportation Security Administration includes all of the other trade agreements for covered items of the country with entitled with a non-discriminatory treatment with the under the World Trade Agreement. Government Procurement Act, the Federal Free Trade Act, enlisted in Title 48 CFR 25.4, apply with the restriction Title 48 CFR 3025 7002, solicitation, ordering, exercising option contracts, listing simplified acquisition threshold in place with the Buy America Act, Title 48 CFR 78 subpart 25.1, 3025 7003 contract clause, unless exemptions of the Title 48 3025 7002 A and B and E and F apply with the clauses. Title 48 CFR 3052 225 70 requirement of certain domestic commodities and solicitations exercising option contract modifications, new items and making the kernel change contract values exceeding the simplified acquisition threshold, procuring in any item covered in the Hsar Title 48 CFR 3025 7002 1 and B. That was 3025, and we'll move on to 3026. 3026 other socioeconomic programs reserved. 3027 patent data and copyrights. 3027 2 patents adjustment of royalties. Report shall be made with a component legal counsel contracting author to coordinate action with the contracting officer and head contracting authority. 3027 208 U the patent technology under the North American Free Trade Agreement contracting officer shall ensure the compliance. 3027 3 patent rights of the United States under the government contract. 304 1 interim final invitation reports notification of subcontractors experimental development and research work may be submitted with the Department of Defense Form 882 report of invention subcontract. 3027 3045 appeals contractor officer authorizes specified actions. Appeals should be made with the contracting procurement officer. 305 administration patent right clauses. 3054 conveying to invention rights acquired by the government contractor officer to ensure the solicitation contracts include with the patent rights and clause included means of the contractor reported inventions made in course with the contracting performance contractor completion requirements be fulfilled with the contractors made with the Department of Defense Form 882 report of invention subcontract. 3027 306 licensed background patent rights and third party contracting procurement officer required determination notifications during the subpart. 3027 rights of the data and copyrights, basic rights of the data clause of the Department of Homeland Security, alternative 4 of the FAR's Title 48 CFR 52.27.14. All contracts containing basic clause unless the head contracting authority approves exclusion approval at the level of above the contracting officer is required for the contract to exclude the items of the category data of the alternative 4. 3027.409 solicitation provision contract clause alternative 4 of the FAR's Title 48 CFR clause 52.27.14 shall be included in solicitation contracts containing the basic clause unless the head contracting authority approves the exclusion. Additional non-conflicting alternates may be used. Alright, 3028 bonds and insurances issue bonds and insurance. 106 Administration. 1066 Furnishing information. Contractor shall, upon request of the furnisher, the name and address of the primary contractor, surety is employee with the supplier, the subcontractor, head of the contractual employment of the relationship with the primary contractor, subcontractor, supplier with the furnishing surety. Information acquired may also be informed. Person believing that they have a legal remedy with the Miller Act with the caution of the consult with their own legal advisor with regard of proper step to take obtain remedies on construction contracts exceeding $2,000 with the contracting officer shall inform of the routine compliance with the check with the complaint with the requested information with the labor, the mechanic, the apprentice, with the training, with the watchman, with the guard employee, with the contractor, subcontractor, with the entity that have been paid wages with the list and those required with the applicable labor standard provision of the contracting officer shall promptly initiate investigation in accordance with the Title 48 CFR 22.4 with the respective employer's rights under the Miller Act with the employer required for the information involved with the contracting officer and shall inform the inquiry and such investigation will be made. Such investigation required pursuant to the provision of the Davis v. Connecticut Contractor Work Hours Safety Standard Act and the Copeland Anti-Kickback Act to serve the proper payments of such employees furnish copy of the payment bond with the contract in accordance with the Title 48 CFR 28.106C. Requiring a copy of the contract satisfied furnishing machine, duplicate copy of the contract cover the showing of the contract number and the date with the contract name, signature, contracting officer, signature, description of the contract work, contracting officer furnishing with a copy of the place and statement that serve of the true and the correct copy of the file with the signature, title, the name of the component of the furnishing with a request certified copy of the determined according Permanent Homeland Security Freedom and Information Act of the Regulation Title CFR 6 CFR Part 5 Subpart B. 10670 Exclusion Administration of Bonds Contractor officer will notify within 30 days of the contract failure to perform in accordance with the term of the contract with the right with a partnership with the principal owner of the bond with the name of all the members of the firm listed with the bond following with the name of the firm. The phrase with the partnership composed of is the principal of the corporation state and corporation shall appear on the bond. Performance of the payment bonds annual bond shall be predated with the contract which it pertains. Bonds may be filed with the original contract that apply with the bonds of the separately maintained with reviewed quarterly validated and separately maintained each of the contract file cross references to applicable bonds. 106-490 Contract Law of the U.S. Coast Guard with the contracting officer transfer of the U.S. Coast Guard Clause 48 CFR 3052 through 2890 notification of the Miller Act with the payment bond protection solicitation contracts and shall require the first carrier subcontractor to insert the clause in all contracts with the payments made are required. 3028 3 Insurance and 306 Insurance under fixed contract. 30690 Contract Release for the aircraft. U.S. Coast Guard contracting officer shall insure for the clause of the Title 48 CFR 3052 228 91 228 93 unless otherwise indicated specific instruction of any of the contract will leave the aircraft including the air of the out of service flight training. U.S. Coast Guard contracting shall insure for the clause of the Title 48 CFR 3052 228 91 loss for the damage to lease aircraft. The contract will lease aircraft except the following circumstances: when hourly rental rate does not exceed $250 to all the rental car with a single traction and exceeding $2,500, when the cost of the whole insured does not exceed 10% of the contract rate. If the lesser insurer does not grant a credit of the uninsured, however, the prevent lesser of the granting the same with the government for the U.S. Coast Guard contract insurance of the clause of the Title 48 CFR 3052 228 92 fair market value aircraft. Fair market value aircraft can be determined. Alright, Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 4411-2 for this amendment that provides no lesser for the aircraft bona fide lease for the 30 day with the liable reason with the interest of the lesser with the title holder of the aircraft, the injury to death of the person, the damage, loss of the property, unless such person with the actual possession with the control of such person at the time of such injury, death, or damage or loss of the short-term intermittent use leases. However, owner made liable to damage for the operation of the aircraft, usually the aircraft owner to retain insurance coverage with the liability during such for relief with the insurance officer with a little no increased premium to be made with the government's exposure to liability as not taken advantage of the coverage of risk and indemnities clause as prescribed in paragraph D. In this section should be used for U.S. Coast Guard contracting officer to ensure the clause of the Homeland Security Acquisition Regulation, risk identities, any of the contractor officer with the flight training for release of the aircraft when the government with exclusive use for the aircraft period of less than 30 days for the U.S. Coast Guard. Any contractor officer with the flight training shall include the clause over the contract schedule stating substantially with the contractor personnel shall at all times during the course of the training be command over the aircraft and at no time other than personnel will be permitted to take command over the aircraft. 3028-307, insurance under the cost reimbursement contracts, group insurance plans. Plans should be determined by the contracting officer who obtained the advice of legal counsel. 3028-310, contract clause for the work of the government installation. 3010-70, for the contract clause, identify the clause for the substantial similar to the Title 48 CFR 3052-228-70. Insurance all solicitation contracts that contain the clause Title 47 of CFR 52-228-5. 3028-3011, solicitation provision contract clause with the liability insurance under in cost reimbursement contract clause, insured clause substantial similar to the Hsar of Title 40 CFR 3052-228. Some of the insurance all solicitation contracts contain the clause FARS 48 to 552-228, some of them less waived for the official one level above the contracting officer. Alright, Homeland Security Acquisition Regulation, taxes is reserved. Alright, Homeland Security Acquisition Regulation, Part 30, Cost Accounting Standards Administration, 3032, Cost Accounting Standards Program Requirements, Con 201, Contract Requirements, 201.5, Waiver this Senior Procurement Officer authorized to waive the applicable cost accounting standards under the FARS Title 40 CFR 32015B. This authority may be redelegated. Waiver request must conform with the Hsar Title 48 CFR 300170. Alright, contracting cost principle procedure. 3031 to contract commercial organization, 205 selected costs, 205-32 pre-contract costs, and decision incur with the pre-contract costs of the contract with Department of Homeland Security employees. We not authorize demand required contractor to incur pre-contract costs. The contract officer must advise of the respective contract with any of the costs incurred before the contract award incurred by the contractor sole risk of the negotiations failed to the risk result of the binding contract payment of these costs will not be made with the government. Regarding exemptions due to reconciliation with the cost when contracting officer with the terms of the incurring pre-contract cost was necessary to meet with the proposed contract delivery schedule for the cost reimbursement contract clause with the Hsar of the Title 40 CFR 3052-231. Some of the pre-contract costs may be the insured with the resulting contract. Alright, contract financing, 3032. 3032, scope of the part, simplified acquisition procedure, financials, 003. Contracting finance may be the permanent purchase made under the authority of Title 48 CFR Part 13. Authority delegated with the contracting officer may not be redelegated. 3032-06, reduction suspension contract payments of under finding of fraud. 3032-06, definition, contracting procurement officer, Department of Head, Homeland Security Remedy Commission official. Responsible the contracting procurement authorized to establish specific procedure report shall be made through the head contracting officer to chief procurement officer. 3032-11, electronic fund transfer, solicitation provision and contract clause, contract officer answer with the FARS Title 48 CFR 15-232-33, payment of electronic funds transferred, central contractor registration, all proposed solicitation or contracts. Alright, protests and disputes, 3033, protest disputes and appeals. 3033, protest, 102 General, 102.90 Protest Classified Solicitation to ensure that the classified information protected appropriate security measures according to required for the protest that involve classified solicitation officer selected for the acquisition shall be submitted with the directive of the contractor officer for their transmission for the government accounting authority of the United States with the federal claims internal resolution with the case agency protest with special instructions will be provided section L with the section 3033 disputes and appeal with the definition agency for the board of contractor appeal with the civilian board of contractor appeals 3033 to 11, the contractor officer, the decision of the Department of Homeland Security, the Board of Contractor Appeal with the note with the file of the Title 48 CFR 33 to 11 of the Civilian Board Contracting Appeals. Board shall address each of the methods following is filed with for an e-file with the U.S. Postal Service the overnight courier delivery 3033 to 14 alternative dispute resolutions with 1996. Is amended in Title 5 U.S. Standard Code 571, authorized and encourage agencies to mediation, conciliation, arbitration of the techniques of the prompt of informed resolution disputes, other purposes of the CBCA guidance of the alternative dispute resolution, and from the CBCA and request for the alternative dispute resolution procedures made with mutual consent of the party of the participant in the alternative dispute resolution process. This is being obtained with either before or after the issue of the controversy has arisen prior to the submission of the claim pre-resolution of a formal claim. Major System Acquisition 3034 General 004 Acquisition Strategy, Title 48 CFR 30,570 Policy applicable to the acquisition strategy for the contributing use of the lead system integrators. Research and Development Contracting. Okay. 3035 000 Scope. 03 Cost shall be determined with the case-to-case basis of the components may be established proceed with the cost sharing the recouping is determined the case-by-case of the recouping and not otherwise required with the law should be determined with the address the factors recovered with the Department of Affairs share with the investment and with the non-recurring costs related with the items required to advise the legal counsel with obtaining prior establishing cost-sharing policies recoupment mechanisms under Title 48 CFR 350303 BC 3035-8 Evaluation Award for limitation awarded contracts acting as a lead system integrator 3035-017 Federal Funded Research and Development Centers. According with Section 3009 of the Homeland Security Act of Title 6 U.S. Code 189B of the Department of Homeland Security by joint sponsor with a multi-agency sponsored agreement with the Department of Energy or one of the major of the Department of Energy national laboratories or if the Department of Energy shall primary source under the multiple agency sponsor agreement of the Department of Energy laboratories or sites work performed by the Department of Energy National Laboratory and subject under the joint participation sponsorships arranged by the Department of Homeland Security comes comply with the policy of the federal funded research development centers in far as 48 CFR 35017 Part 30 3570 Information Dissemination Educational Institutions 30 3571 Department of Homeland Security desired widespread dissemination result of the funded with the non-sensitive of the research of the contract therefore may publish subject to the provision of the data rights or patent rights clause of the contract with the research of the result of the professional journal books trade publications and appropriate media 30 3572 with the contract officer shall use the clause of the 30 40 Title 40 30 52 235 simply disseminating information educational institution contracts educational institute research of the non-sensitive classified with the contractor involved with the sensitive classified research contracting officer shall prepare in a special contract requirement for the condition of disseminating with the approval of the designated of the government official. Alright, Homeland Security Acquisition Regulation Construction and Architectural Engineering Contracts 3036-1 General Policy 104 Policy 104-90 Authority of one-step the key turnkey design building projects United States Coast Guard head of the contracting authority U.S. Coast Guard may use one-step turnkey selection procedure to enter the fixed price design building contracts according to Title 14 U.S. Standard Code 61187 3036-2 Special aspect of the contract over the construction reserve 3036-5 Contract Clause 3036-570 Special precaution of the work operating at airports will require work at an operating airport. Insert clause Title 48 CFR 3052-236-70 Special precautions of the working operating airports and solicitation contracts. Alright, 3037 servicing contract. 3037-1 service contract general, 103 reserve, 104 personal service contract, 104-70 personal service contract authorization call to the personal service expert with control include the section 831 Homeland Security Act title 6 United States Code 392. Section includes the authority of personal service contracts include authority to contract regarding with the pay limitation title 5 U.S. Code 3109 with services necessary to do with the urgent Homeland Security need. 104-90 personal service contracts. U.S. Coast Guard had contracting authority may enter the medical personnel service of the contracts according to Title 10 U.S. Code 1091. 3037 104-91 personal service contract with individuals under the authority of Title 10 U.S. Standard Code 1091. Healthcare professionals personal service contract or the individuals should be selected with the procedure with the levels in the section selection made within the procedure of the section exempt the statute Title 48 CFR 3006 completion requirement of Title 48 3006 9000 from the Title 48 CFR Part 6 competition requirement of contracting. Contracting officer should provide adequate advance notice for the contracting operator individual residing in the area of the facility. Notice shall include the qualification criteria again for the individual responding with shall be evaluated. Contracting officers will solicit officers of the means of seeking competition such as local publication service area with the facility acquisition of healthcare using the personal service of the contract with exempt from posting a synopsis required in Title 48 CFR Part 5. Contracting officers shall provide qualification individuals responding notice for the representative responsible for evaluation ranking according to evaluation received with the individual should be solely with a personal qualification established with a particular healthcare service to be acquired with the government estimate of the reasonable rate for the fee of the cost. Resident with the responsible evaluation ranking shall provide with the contracting of the rationale for the ranking of the individuals consistent with the required qualifications upon receipt of the ranking listed officer of the contracting officer shall enter the negotiate with the high-ranking officer for the mutual satisfactory contract cannot be negotiated with the contracting officer shall determine negotiations with the highest ranked offer enter into the negotiation with the next highest. Enter into the negotiation qualified officer select on a basis of qualification rates and fees for the other costs in the event of the other in one individual responds to the advertised requirement the contractor officer is authorized to negotiate with the contract award. In this case, the individual must still meet with the minimum qualification requirement. The contracting officer must be able to determination when the price of the fair reasonable with the unfair reasonable price can be obtained with a qualified individual. Requirement shall be canceled and inquired using procedure within those set forth in this section. And the total amount paid for the individual any of the year healthcare services under personal services contract shall not exceed the pay cap of the construct 4M 4219 series Coast Guard acquisition procedures. Contract may be provided with the same per diem travel expense for the authorized government employee with the actual transportation per diem lieu of the substantive of the travel between the home and place of the business off of the official duty station and only travel outside the local area support a statement of work coordinated benefits tax maintenance of the record of the appropriate offices. Contracting officers remember the contract funds all sufficient other contingencies items that may be cited in the statement of work of the healthcare services. Alright, 3038 Federal Supply Schedule Contracting Reserved. Part 3039 Acquisition Information Technology Reserved. Part 340 Reserved. 341 Acquisition Utility Service Reserved. Alright, 342 Contract Administration Audit Services. 3042-15 Contract Performance Information. 3442-1502 Policy. Components of that shall use the Contractor Performance Assessment Reporting System, other performance reporting systems designated by the Department of Homeland Security Chief Procurement Office evaluating contract performance according to the Title 48 CFR, so 42-1503 and 1503. Complement you with the construction contractor praise support system, models of the contractor performance assessment report system, other performance reporting systems designated by the Department of Homeland Security Chief Procurement Office evaluating construction contract performance. As far as 48 CFR 42-1502, 1503, components of the use of the architectural engineer contract administrative support system, modules of the contractor performance assessment reporting system, performance reporting is designated by the Department of Homeland Security Chief Procurement Officer for evaluating architectural engineering contract performance according to the Title 48 CFR Section 42-1502 and 1503. Support for 304270 contractors, office representatives, support 30427000 contractor clause, contracting officer insurance for the clause 34, Title 48 CFR 3052 24272 contracting officer for the representative solicitation contracts which are intended that representative will be assigned a contract to perform functions of the technical nature. Part 3043 contract modifications are reserved. 3044 subcontracting policy procedures were reserved. And then we'll cut the tape at quality assurance.